It's turning into a good group for him. He's won 3 of his 4 matches. Liang WENBO, on the other hand, has only had 1 win from 4. So he simply has to win this match. It can be difficult sometimes to follow the table in a Championship League group because the players have played different numbers of matches. This is the only stage in each group when everyone's played the same number of matches, is after they've all played 4. And at that juncture, it's Judd Trump, top of the table with 4 wins. He's definitely in the group semi-finals. Mark Williams and Ryan Day, the 2 Welshmen in the group, well placed with 3 wins. And it's Stuart Bingham with 2, Sean Murphy and Liang WENBO with 1. Kyron Wilson, well, he's lost all 4 so far. And is just starting on the other table against Ryan Day. Remember, top 4 through to the group semi-finals later, but 5th place is enough to guarantee at least another shot in Group 6 starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
So they've very quickly decided to have a re-rack of this opening frame.
Mark Williams to break.
It's always something to look forward to when Liang WENBO is playing. Just fantastic to watch. So Williams is going to be in first in this opening frame. He was really into his scoring rhythm towards the end of his previous match against Stuart Bingham. Finished off with 76 and that 142 total clearance in the last 2 frames.
Five. 6. 10. 11. 14. 15. 20. 21.
'A decent split on the reds, but hasn't landed on anything.
28.
Always relying on a bit of luck when you go into the pack with that many reds in it.
Mark Williams, 28.
You get a fantastic split and still come up landing on nothing. Would have been a spectacular pot if he'd pulled it off, and he was very close to. He wouldn't have thought it was possible to miss that one.
One. 8.
And that wasn't the hardest looking pot
Yeah,
either.
WENBO, 8.
So surprising misses from both players in the last few minutes. And the way Williams has been playing so far this morning, that could be Liang WENBO's last shot in this frame.
1. 6. 7. 11. 12. 16. 17.
42 in front and doesn't really have a great deal of work
22.
to do with the Reds. So really should win the frame here.
23. 30. 31.
2 snookers needed now. I'm sure Williams will add this red for extra insurance.
38. 39.
So Liang had a good chance in this frame. Missed a fairly routine pot. Has been made to pay.
46. 47. 54. 54 in the frame, Mark Williams.
So Mark Williams, a comfortable winner of the opening frame then. Continues his good form that he's been showing so far today. He leads Liang WENBO by 1 frame to 0. Liang WENBO with his career details there. As you can see, he'll be 30 next week. Been around quite some time. And the highlight of his career so far, surely earlier this season when he won the English Open in Manchester. And had that tremendous celebration after potting the ball that clinched it for him in the final.
Second frame, Liang WENBO
against Judd Trump. He was also the first player from China ever to reach the World Championship quarter-finals, and hard to believe that's 9 years ago now. He was eventually beaten by Ronnie O'Sullivan. So often nowadays you see players break off in a frame and they leave a red. That seems to be pretty much the only way of making sure you don't do that, is to get in behind one of the ball colours. Well, hasn't really happened for Liang so far in this match.
1. Five. 6.
Williams still a top 16 player. He has been #1 in the world for a couple of spells. Dropped a long way
13.
down the rankings, but he keeps battling his way back up. Currently 16th in the world.
14.
Doing well to be still so competitive all these years on from that wonderful golden spell he had around the turn of the century. Period of 5 or 6 years where he won 2 World, 2 UK
21.
and 2 Masters titles. His 2 crucible triumphs in the
22.
World Championship, both achieved in highly dramatic circumstances. He was 10-6 down overnight and fell even further behind early on the second day of the 2000 World Final against Matthew Stevens. At one stage his deficit was 13-7, but he hung in brilliantly
29.
and ended up winning 18-16. 3 years later he was
30.
10-2 up against Ken Doherty, then lost 9 of the next 10 frames to be pegged back to 11-all. And 5 times on that final day Doherty drew level with him. Each time though Williams won the next frame, so Doherty never managed to get in front, and in the end
37.
Williams ran out the winner again, 18-16. He seemed to specialise in
48.
high stakes drama during that period. When he won the first of his 2 Masters titles in 1998, he did so on a respotted black in the final frame against Stephen Hendry. And dramatic finishes to both of his UK
43.
final wins. Went to the last frame against Ken Doherty in 2003. Sorry, 2002.
$51.
It's been very hard really over the last 15 years for any player to ever establish himself as the undisputed best in the world at any given time. But certainly for a year or two, Mark Williams
52.
was.
$57. 58.
Just looks to be growing in confidence as the day goes on. Finished off brilliantly against
65.
Stuart Bingham. He started pretty well in this match.
66.
And this blue is frame ball.
$71. Mark Williams 71 and the frame.
Well, Liang WENBO only needed 1 snooker, but decided not to come back to the table and try to play for it. So that's 71, the only score in the second frame. And now Mark Williams leads Liang WENBO by 2 frames to 0. Kyron Wilson started the day in danger of joining the relatively short list of players who have gone through a Championship League group losing every match. But it looks like he may be in the process of averting that possibility, because he's 2-0 up on the other table against Ryan Day. WENBO must feel he's hardly played in this match. But if you're going to play shots like that, that's going to be the consequence. However, Williams is certainly not going to punish him.
Mark Williams 1.
Straight out of position. So are we finally going to see what Liang WENBO is made of in this match? Hardly featured in the first couple of frames, as I was saying.
Three. Four.
That English Open win in Manchester, Liang's first ranking title, it was a bit isolated really in the early part of his season. Didn't get beyond the last 16 of any of the other ranking tournaments in the early months. Got to the quarter-finals of the Scottish Open then just before Christmas. And was a semi-finalist in the World Grand Prix at Preston Guildhall just a few weeks ago. So results starting to pick up again, although he was then beaten in the last 64 of the Welsh Open last week by Michael White.
12.
But whatever happens now, it's going to go down as a good season for him. Only 8 players have earned more ranking points than Liang in the current campaign.
$19. 20.
And that's despite the fact that he actually took a break at the start of the season, didn't enter either of the first 2 ranking tournaments of the season, and didn't play in the German Masters either.
$27.
He's looking at the plant here.
28.
And this is the first time we've really seen him in this situation in the match, in among the balls. Started yesterday's play quite well, beat
35.
Kyron Wilson 3-1 in his first match. Then lost in a decider to Judd Trump. Was then beaten 3-1 by Stuart Bingham. And was fairly comprehensively beaten then by Ryan Day in the last match of yesterday's play, losing by 3 frames to 0.
36.
But 3 wins could still be enough to get him through to the group semi-finals. So he still has a chance. He's got some work to do to turn this one around, and then plays Sean Murphy in his last match of the round robin section.
$42. 43. 50. 51. 58.
Oh, can you believe that? He was so close to the winning line in this frame.
Liang WENBO, 58.
57 in front. And 75 left. He's really almost on the brink of making it 2-1 there. And he still might, but he'll have to wait a bit longer.
Yeah.
As Liang WENBO looks to avert the whitewash here, there's been a whitewash on the other table. Kyron Wilson has beaten Ryan Day by 3 frames to 0, and that averts the possibility of Wilson joining the fairly short list of players who have gone through a Championship League group losing every single match. Only 7 players have ever suffered that fate, although for 2 of them it's happened on 2 occasions. But Kyron Wilson, having lost all 4 matches yesterday, did have the possibility of adding his name to that list, but that won't now be happening. So he's got his first win on the board.
1.
So another chance for WENBO to finish what he couldn't quite when he was in on that break of 58 earlier. He now leads by 58. The black will take that to 65. We just need to find one more red.
Eight. Liang WENBO.
Hasn't quite
8.
managed to do it. Williams 65 behind. Only 67 left, but looking at the way the balls are placed, the chance is definitely there. Needs this in though, and I think that will be that. Well,
Mark, you don't need snookers yet. I got to give you a warning, all right, for a gentlemanly conduct. No, he's moved too many.
I was just waiting to see what was being said between them.
Well, it's a warning. I got to report it, so they might find it. I don't know.
Well, when Williams missed that red, he conceded the frame. And I just noticed he didn't need a snooker. Now, there was a spate of players doing that some years ago, so a rule was brought in that although you can still technically concede the frame when you don't need a snooker. And it does count as a concession. It's regarded as a disciplinary matter. I don't think Williams realised that was the situation. I'm sure he knows about the rule, but I don't think he quite realised that he was conceding the frame when he didn't need a snooker. And the reason I went silent there was to hear what the referee, Paul Collier, was saying to him, and he was pointing that out and had to give him a warning. He was not quite apologetic about it, but did make it clear that obviously he wasn't getting any enjoyment out of giving the warning to his compatriot. He did also point out that he'd have to report it, and Williams may well end up being fined for that. So I'm sure he'll be annoyed with himself over that. Won't be a massive fine or anything, but it'll be a few £100s, I'm sure, if that is what happens. I do think it's absolutely right that that rule was brought in. It's not a rule of the game as such, because under the rules of snooker you can concede at any stage, but it's more a rule of the association. And there were occasions where players were conceding frames very early on. I remember a frame at the Irish Open, which was a ranking tournament back in the 1990s. Quinton Hahn conceded a frame when I think there were still something like 12 or 13 reds left on the table against Stephen Lee.
This is my last game, then I go.
Ronnie O'Sullivan conceded a frame in a quarter-final against Peter Ebden when I think he was actually ahead in the frame.
When do you play?
So there were a few incidents like that, and I think it was entirely right that that rule was brought in.
No, he was 64 behind, 65 1.
Now you can hear Williams just asking Paul Collier if he was sure that Liang WENBO was so far in front that Williams needed a snooker. But Paul is absolutely correct about that. So Williams will have to put that out of his mind. I'm sure he'll be a bit frustrated about it. That's the sort of shot that at first glance might just look like a reckless slash at the Reds, but it was just a very attacking safety shot, and he's played it pretty well. albeit that Williams does at least have some chance of a long red.
One.
It's always risky playing a shot like that, opening up the reds, bringing the cue ball back to baulk. Thing is, if it works out and you do get a chance, it's probably going to be a pretty good one. Didn't work out for Liang this time, and Williams is in.
4. Nine.
A lot of players would let something like that linger in their mind for the rest of the match. Williams being given that warning and being informed of the possibility of a fine. But if anyone is going to be good at shrugging off things like that, it will be Mark Williams. He really is the epitome of just getting on with it, which is
15.
Absolute ideal temperament for a game like snooker.
16. $22. 23. 29. 30.
'This win will actually put Williams top of the group table if he can close it out.
36.
He joined Judd Trump on 4 wins, but he'd have 1 more frames. Although, of course, Trump has played 1 match less.
37.
'Williams' 1 remaining match is actually against Judd Trump.
43.
Trump does have another match to play in between when he faces Ryan Day. What a good morning it's been
44.
for the 2000 and 2003 world champion. Looks increasingly likely now that he's going to make it back-to-back wins, having already seen off Stuart Bingham, the newly crowned Welsh Open champion, a little earlier in this session.
50. 56. 57.
Just looked a little bit anxiously after that for a moment. Thought that maybe the pink was going to
63.
come back out. But this looks to be
64.
all over now. Williams 64 in front. Pink will make that 70 with only 59 left.
$70. 71.
Finished off his other match in this session against Bingham with a century. Might do the same here.
77. 78.
You talk about shrugging things off after that incident at the end of the previous frame. He's come straight back out and done this.
84. 85. 85.
Doesn't really matter about that. He couldn't have beaten his own 142 in the race for the £500 highest break prize in the group. But it's a really good morning for Mark Williams. He's gone top of the Group 5 table for now at least. He beat Stuart Bingham earlier. He's now beaten Liang WENBO by 3 frames to 1.